it's Maddie and Mieke from The Thriving Mindset, your go to podcast for real talk, deep growth, and the tools to empower you to thrive. From challenges, dealing with self doubt, fears, to breakthroughs, we've been there and we're here to share what we've learned along the way. And today we're going to talk about the inner critic, how to stop letting fear and self doubt drive your life. So, in this episode, we're going to get real about fear and self doubt. And it's not the kind that keeps you physically safe, of course, but it's that sneaky little voice inside your head that tells you you're not good enough, you're not ready, or those sneaky self sabotaging behaviors that keep you stuck in patterns like procrastination, people pleasing, and avoiding, and so on. We'll break down what fear and self doubt really are, how to recognize and spot when they're actually running the show, and how to shift your mindset so they become fuel instead of roadblocks. You'll walk away with powerful insights, tools to break through fear and self doubt, and a new perspective on your inner critic so you can stop playing small and start showing up as your next level self. So let's dive in and start with our first question. What is fear really, and why does it show up when we're growing?
I'm so excited about this episode because if I look back at at so many moments of my growth, fear has always been part of it, right? And I think we have this mindset of like that we don't want fear to be there because it's an uncomfortable feeling, but it is such an integral part of growth. So yeah, that's why I'm really excited that we're doing this episode today because it's so important to really demystify what it actually means to be fearful, right? So if we take a step back and we say, okay, what is fear, right? Or like what like fear it originally like evolved to keep us safe, right? It's as simple as that. Children are fearful because it's such an integral part of us because it made us help us survive. It's this don't touch the fire. It's this run. There's a big scary bear, run away, right? So it's really kind of like that fear triggers your fight, flight, or freeze response, and it helps you to react quickly to threats. So step one, fear is good, but and this is where actually it comes in this whole like kind of in this whole growth period, why it's such a tricky, I guess, relationship that we have with it is when we start to overthink or our mind starts to overthink, fear, of course, becomes a limitation. So the mind, as we've talked about it in previous patterns, and I'm sure Maddie, you can share a bit more from like the scientific part in a sense in a second about it. But like our mind is pattern driven, right? So it really thrives on repetition, on routine, and it loves the known. So our mind is it likes to take the path of least resistance, and it really likes the familiarity. So it really does like associate safety with familiarity. So instead of like protecting us from real danger, fear becomes a tool of mental resistance. So the mind is trying to pull you back to your comfort zone, where things are safe, where it's predictable, and the I guess the challenge that comes from that is that the mind would in the best case scenario for the mind, it would like to, play things small. But the thing is always small things or out of like this like zone of like the small things, let's call it that, it's really hard to grow because growth usually happens outside our comfort zone. And we've talked about it so many times, right? It's really once you get challenged and once things change and you have to adapt and you have to like learn, that's where the magic happens. So it's like this is, and this is why fear often shows up right before either like a breakthrough or right before like kind of like these like growth moments. And I always like to say it's like fear is like a sign that you're touching the edge of who you've been and you're stepping into who you are becoming. So it's obviously it's not like the whole fear thing of like, hey, I'm scared of, I'm going to burn my hands or whatever because there's fire, but kind of like I'm fearful to experience this at the moment is really like you're at the threshold of change. And that's something beautiful. And I think to like quickly to summarize it is really it's okay to sit with fear and to accept fear and to say, okay, I'm fearful. this is scaring me. You know, I know mind, like what I like to do is I like to talk to my mind and just say, I know you're trying to protect me. I know you're trying to be there for me, but there's no space for you right now because I need to do this. You know, I
Mm,
need to, I need to go on the stage. I need to, speak to this person. I need to ask this person out on a date. I need to, whatever it is. It's kind of like, I know you're there to protect me, but there's no room for you right now. So it's, it's always like this, yeah, growth really happens outside the comfort zone. And I wanted to share one more example, and then I'd really love to hear from you, Maddie, because I think you always bring a nice, like, yeah, touch to it as well, like how the whole aspect of fear. So, for example, I remember when I had an opportunity for a speaking gig, and this was way early in my career. And imposter syndrome was real and all these topics were real, but I had this opportunity for a speaking gig, and what I did is I usually, like, I would jump on it immediately because I didn't give fear enough time. So it was kind of like I got this, like, for example, an email that said, "Hey, Anamika, would you like to be part of this, like, I don't know, on stage and talk about this and this?" And the moment I'd just be like, "Yes, I'll do it," and then, to not give fear so much time. Of course, it's not for everyone to like to go that way, but that's like basically how I usually approach like these kind of situations, because then the closer the gig came, or the closer like the speaking gig came, the more fearful of course I became, because, and here's the mind of kicking in and saying, this isn't safe, this isn't the familiar pattern that I'm used to. And I always felt like so much like joy and strength like afterwards. And that's what I mean at the beginning when I said it's always fears, like this, like part of like you're you're at the threshold of something big, of a big change or whatever. And that's why it's such an important component, and not to condemn fear and be like, oh, I don't want to be fearful, but to really see it as your buddy.
I love what you just shared. And yeah, thank you always for sharing also your personal stories that are always so relatable. I think it's really important to emphasize again what you said. Like, really, fears are an opportunity for breakthrough. So, whenever we have these challenges in our life and we doubt ourselves and fear kicks in, that actually means that on the other side of that fear is something that we probably want and that we want to
Mhm.
achieve. And just because things scare us doesn't mean that we have to let that stop us. And I'm also glad you brought up the psychology behind fears. So, what fear is basically an emotional and physiological response to perceived threat or danger. And I love how you highlighted when you said, like, I actually talk to my mind and I'm like, I know you're trying to protect me, but right now there's no space for that. So awareness is always so important, recognizing when fear is actually there. And I think what I want to add to this is that we have to distinguish between actual threat or danger or perceived threat, right?
Mhm.
So the actual threat, when fear kicks in, that is definitely there to protect us, right? If there's like a bear chasing us, or there's like a fire in front of us, or a thief coming in, like that is good fear, okay? That is definitely there to protect us. But a lot of times in life, we act upon perceived fears, which means there literally is no actual threat. Like this fear, the scenario, the worst case scenario we're imagining, what we're afraid of, is just a mental illusion. And how sad is that if we would let that stop us from achieving what we actually want? So I think it's always good to be aware, like, okay, is this thing I'm afraid of like an actual threat, or is my mind making up stories? And when I think about it, when I'm aware of that, I can take a step back, take a deep breath, and recognize, okay, it might not be as scary as it seems. I don't have to be as afraid. So, really talking to yourself, soothing yourself by acknowledging, is this a real threat or not, can really, I think, help to overcome or break through your fears. And I want to dive a bit deeper into what are the signs, the subtle or not so subtle signs, how fear shows up in our daily life. Because as you've shared, like fear is something that is inevitable, right? Throughout our life, throughout our growth journeys, it's inevitable that we will encounter fear over and over again in different areas of our life. And that's normal because, as we know from research from psychology, fear, this our psychology is wired to protect us from threats, and that's why we have fears. But as I've just shared before, sometimes we have to make sure to acknowledge that they're mental illusions. So sometimes that also means that fear shows up and it may be subconscious and we're not even aware of it.
Mm.
So this is why I want to dive a bit deeper into how does fear show up in our daily life. So one thing I would like to, or the one thing that I want to start with is self-doubt, right? And we
Mm.
all doubt ourselves throughout our life. Can I actually make it? Can I start my dream business? Can I get that dream man? Can I move abroad? Whatever it is. And then we have this like, oh, can I? Can I? Can I really? Maybe I can't, right? So there's literally no person on earth who has not ever dealt with self-doubt, right? It's very common. When self-doubt is there, it always means that there is at least one hidden fear behind that. And this may be different types of fears, like fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of success. There are so many different types of fears that can show up. So whenever there's self-doubt, it's really helpful to question, okay, what is the actual fear behind my self-doubt? And the fear is
Mm.
always what you try to avoid. It's
Mm.
usually the worst case scenario. So that's what we're usually afraid of. And from a psychological perspective, the psychological root cause of self doubt is always limiting beliefs and fears. And
Mhm.
limiting beliefs are any fears that make us doubt that we can achieve what we want to. The tricky part is 95% of our beliefs and our fears and what's going on in our mind, our mental programming is subconscious. This is why it's not always very evident and easy to spot when self doubt or fears are there. So, very obvious examples of how fears can show up in our lives. I think these are easily understandable. So, for instance, having panic attacks or anxiety spikes, or
Mhm.
avoiding social situations entirely, being under chronic stress or being burnt out. Um, when you're triggered, when you really go verbal and go into conflict mode. So, these are very obvious signs of fear, but there are also more subtle signs, and this is what we have to pay attention to in our daily lives. And these are basically self-sabotaging behaviors.
Mm.
So this can be any self-sabotaging behavior, for instance, procrastination,
Mm.
perfectionism, people pleasing, staying busy, to avoid your uncomfortable emotions. So it's important to understand that sometimes fears are very evident. It's easy to spot fears, but sometimes in life it's more difficult. And this is usually when the fears are subconscious. But how can we spot them? When we self-sabotage. So self-sabotaging is any behavior that gets in our way from achieving what we want to when it negatively impacts our
Mm.
well-being. So the key is always, as we love to say, both of us, the key is always awareness, right? Once you name it, you can work with it, not against it. And this relates to what you were talking about before. Like once you are aware, you can work on soothing yourself and actually thinking of how can I break through the fears instead of letting them stop me.
That is so interesting because I think it's this whole aspect of the subconscious is also on the one hand side to me it's always so daunting and scary, fearful because it's so unknown, I guess.
Mm.
And on the other hand side, it's so fascinating. I mean, you have a whole you have this whole being, right? You are so much more than your thoughts and your heart, than your consciousness. You're so much more because you have this beautiful layer of yeah, it's just a beautiful layer of being, right? So I think it's yeah, it's always I always have this two-sided relationship with the subconscious because I'm, yeah, like I said, on the one hand side it scares me, and on the other hand side it's so fascinating and beautiful to see what makes us tick and why we are the way that we are and stuff. What resonated so well with me, what you just said, is the whole aspect of people pleasing, because I am such a I am such a not I'm such a people pleaser, but I this is definitely a fear, and I never recognized it as a fear. It was, for me, it was always kind of this but I'm nice and I'm saying yes, and I'm I just like to give and I like to see other people happy, and and once I also looked into it a little bit deeper, we talked about it, and once I looked deeper into it, I was like, Oh, wait, it's so true. It's you know, it's like kind of this like avoiding conflict. Because the moment you say yes to somebody else and you know, people please, it's because you're like, oh no, I don't want the stress and I don't want, you know, I don't want the conflict. Oh, and I don't want to be rejected, of course, you know. And it's like, oh, and I just want to be liked and I don't want to be seen as difficult or whatever. And those are all fears. Those aren't like you're a nice person. Although of course you're also a nice person, and it's never black and white, as we say. But still, that was for me, that really, like, yeah, that was an eye opener. And the other thing is like this whole thing of like overthinking. And I think you also like, you called it like this like negative self-talk slash overthinking. And it's really like this analysis paralysis, which I think is such a hard word to say.
Mm,
Say that 3 times when you're like at a glass of wine. But like but it's really like it's like an endless planning or seeking like for more information. And you know, it's just that it keeps you like from making that decision. So it's like, you know, it's like, oh, let me just think about it a little bit longer. And Maddie, I shared with you a situation before, right? So I've been working with this initiative for a while, and it's taken me, I think, a year now to finally say I'm done with it. I quit it basically. Like it's the project that I've been doing for a long, long time. And I think I was in a way, it was like I was always like, but maybe this and that and that, and I was so caught up with my mind, right? And I was just scared to really to let it to let it go. Um, yeah, and I think the way it shows up is really like kind of this like you spend weeks, you know, tweaking your brand or your website or your tagline or whatever, and you really keep yourself from actually going out there. And that's yeah, and I think that's like a very it's very powerful. It's like very powerful in a bad way to kind of like over plan and to really to really go into that. But I think you actually did like a workshop on it, like about like procrastination, right? And like also
I did.
like high achievers. Yeah, did you want to share like what you guys did there?
Um, so I actually just wrote that down and I was like, ooh, I should touch upon perfectionism because that's
Hmm.
another very, very common self-sabotaging behavior. But first, just responding to what you were saying, I'm so glad you brought it up because people pleasing is so common.
Hmm.
So many people, and especially a lot of women, people
Hmm.
please. And I love how you said, like, oh, I used to just think I'm being nice. I'm being kind, maybe I'm being accommodating, you know?
Hmm.
And this is exactly how fears can be subconscious because the actual fear behind people pleasing is not to be accepted, not to be appreciated, not to be liked, or not to be loved.
Yeah.
But because this is often exactly, so it's such a good example, because this is often subconscious, on the conscious level, we think what you've just said, I'm just kind, I'm being a nice person. So this is a very good example of how sneaky fears can really get in our way and negatively impact us because if you're a strong people pleaser, and I'm sure many people in the audience can maybe resonate, like can resonate with this, it comes with a high cost
Yes.
because you're actually saying you're saying yes when you want to say no, and over time it gets really, really draining. So it's
So
not good
draining.
for your well-being, it sucks your energy, you don't feel good about it, and then you might even start resenting the people that you said yes to instead of saying no because you're like,
Yeah.
well, shouldn't they have known that they shouldn't have asked me? Like this is
Create
what I
your
hear a lot
own,
from.
yeah, you create your own drama, right? But you're the one who made it because you thought you were being nice.
Mm.
Yeah.
So a very good example of how sneaky fears can negatively impact our lives. And perfectionism, yes, I did hold a masterclass and workshop about it, is another, I think, very, very common self-sabotaging behavior. And I can speak from my own experience as someone who's intentionally trying to overcome perfectionism, because I also thought for the most of my life, I did not even identify as a perfectionist.
Yeah.
I was always just thinking, I just have really high standards. right?
Yeah.
And most perfectionists, I've worked with quite a few, they think that. They're just like, no, when you ask them, no, I'm definitely not perfectionist. I just have really high standards. I just like when everything is well done. So these are the conscious stories that we tell ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But what's actually the hidden fear or subconscious fear behind perfectionism is actually fear of failure.
Yeah.
So, what's characteristic for perfectionists is that they often set ridiculously high standards, and this is the point, not just high standards, ridiculously high standards that are almost not or maybe not even achievable. So,
Mm.
they're unrealistic standards, plus it's paired with being overly self critical.
Mm.
So, this is where it's really interesting. So, a very common pattern that comes with perfectionism is actually procrastination.
Yeah.
And this is because perfectionists subconsciously fear failure, feel not being good enough, not performing well enough. So, what
Mm.
do you do to avoid that feeling of failure? You might not even get started, or
Mm.
you, as you said before, you take hours on tweaking the presentation and the colors and the fonts,
Mm.
and it's inefficient working, right? So
Yeah.
inefficient working or procrastinating, but the reason behind it is to avoid failure. So another, I think, very common example of how fear gets in our way in our daily lives. And these are just examples. So as we've shared before, any type of self-sabotaging behavior, whether it's overthinking, negative self-talk, people pleasing, being overly anxious, overworking, for
Mm.
instance, also delaying, these are all patterns that are driven by conscious but mostly subconscious fears. And this is why I think it's so good that we're talking about this today, because the first step of breaking through your fears is always awareness.
Yeah.
If you're not aware, how are you going to change things? How are you going to break through?
I love that because I just had this memory of like creating a flyer, and I spent hours like, oh, am I gonna put the logo there, am I gonna put this there, and da 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 da. And it's so
Mm,
like, if somebody would see it from the outside, they wouldn't have even known how much time went into it, and it was be like, oh yeah, cool, and they wouldn't even know. But it's yeah, it's the process, right? So, when we looked into this episode, right, we were also thinking about like, so how could we actually like reframe fear as an invitation to breakthrough, and not to like see it as a stop sign, right? So it's like really like, how can we reframe it? And as we already mentioned at the beginning, it's, you know, it's like we have this old view that fear is like, okay, danger, okay, wrong turn. If I feel afraid, I must not be ready. This fear means I should wait, I should prepare more, I should back off. If I really want to do this, I'd feel more confident. So it's kind of like this old view is like kind of like, ooh, fear, fear is something bad, right? And as you already said, like it's always about awareness, right? And it is about like reframing, and it is about like taking like limiting beliefs and putting like new beliefs into it. So if we look at it, we could take our new view, could kind of be like, okay, fear is growth. You know, we could be like, okay, fear is part of my growth journey. So if fear is showing up, something important must be happening. If fear is showing up, it means, ooh, this is unfamiliar. And it's not that it's unsafe, but it's just unfamiliar. And to kind of like remind ourselves in the sense that it's not, you know, to have this loving conversation with your mind and being like, okay, I know you're there, I know you're fearful, but there's no space for you right now, because, you know, this isn't unsafe, this is just something new we're doing. You're totally safe, you're not going to be eaten by a bear. And to kind of like, you know, to feel fear, to like really like to feel fear as a friend, and to really like to reframe this. And I really like this, like we were talking about it way back, but like kind of like this, like I'm probably stepping into something meaningful, I'm probably doing something really
mm,
cool now. So it's, in the moment it's always so hard to do exactly that, but it is, fear is such a strong feeling, which I think is a good thing, because that way it really reminds you to be like, okay, I feel it in my chest, I feel it in my tummy or whatever, and then to be like, oh, hi fear, you're here, okay, nice, must be that we're going, there's going to be something really cool happening. So kind of like in a sense, like, yeah, rephrasing that. So fear often arises not because you're doing something dangerous, it's really because you're doing something different. And that's That's it, right? And that's kind of it, unless, of course, as
Love
you
it.
mentioned before, unless you're standing, in front of a hungry bear. I don't know why the bear keeps coming up, but that's like the example that I have at the moment. But maybe because fear is like a big bear for me. It's, it can be a cute little teddy bear, or it can be like a big hungry brown bear. And even hungry brown bears are lovely. Anyway, so it's really about like um, reframing it this way, like really honors that your system is not broken. It's really trying to protect you. Your fear isn't the enemy. It's really a milestone marker. And that the presence of fear doesn't mean stop, don't do this. It really means cool, you're onto something. Let's go. Let's do it.
I love what you've just shared, and I actually like that the bear example is coming up, even though, yeah, it's a little random, but I think because it is so relatable to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think every time, like, I fear something, I will actually ask myself, is it just like this wild bear? Is it an actual thing? Is it an actual danger? Or is it a perceived danger?
Yeah.
So actually not that bad. Like, it's a good metaphor to keep in mind. Um, but yeah, to get back, as we've emphasized before, always good to be aware. Like, is it an actual danger or threat, or is it a perceived danger or threat? I like to always call it like a mental illusion, like a mind game, right? And I love the things that you've said. So you said instead of seeing fear as something dangerous, see fear as a friend.
Yeah.
It's a mechanism trying to protect you. The primary intention of your fear is not to stop you or to do something bad to you. It's trying to protect you. But then once you identify that fear, you can then question, okay, is it really trying to, like, it is always trying to protect me, but do I really have to be afraid or not? And you also said basically it's good to rethink fear also and see it as a sign of growth.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also what you shared at the beginning of the episode. When there are big breakthroughs in your life that are going to happen very soon, that inevitably means that you will have to break through some fears.
Yeah.
So instead of seeing fear as something really scary, see it as like, oh my God, this is a positive sign. It's not going to be easy, but once I break through, I will get more of what I want in my life, whatever that is. So I think this can help us to really be more compassionate with ourselves and have a more positive understanding of fear and take away some of the pressure and the hard emotions that really come with fear. And the third thing that I also want to re-emphasize that you've shared is fear doesn't always mean that something is actually unsafe. It just means that you're dealing with something unfamiliar. And I think this is
Exactly.
such a good reminder always to be like, okay, it doesn't mean it's actually unsafe. It doesn't mean it's really unsafe. Not like this bear that we had before, to give an example. It just means it's unfamiliar. And this is why fear can show up in our lives. And this makes it a lot less scary if we go into dealing with our fears with that kind of mindset and that kind of attitude. Um, a quote that I really love that really stayed with me since I found it is everything you want is on the other side of fears. And yeah, so now when I face my own fears, that's how I see it. I see fear as an invitation for growth and an invitation to break through to achieve what I want to in my life. And this is also something that you've mentioned before. It also means fear always signals that there's something that deeply matters to you. Otherwise, you would
Yeah.
not be scared,
Yeah.
right? So it's always pointing you more towards what you want. And if we go back to the what we talked about in episode 1, it's always when you realign or when you align more with what you want in life, you will inevitably have to break through fears. So it's a positive thing. It's a chance to grow. It's a chance to align with more of what you want in your life. So yeah, I think that's a very great way to reframe and also change our relationship with fear once we really focus on understanding fear in these more positive ways. Now, of course, we're here to talk about tools to empower
Yeah.
you to thrive. And that also means it's really quite helpful to have some tools to break through fears instead of letting the fears stop us. So, as a mindset coach, I would always say it's to really break through your fears, you need to treat the psychological root cause because fear is something psychological. It's a psychological reaction, right? Because fear, the nature of fear is psychological, you have to treat it on a psychological level. That is how I see it. I mean, this is why surface level strategies like action plans, when you're scared and someone is like, just create an action plan and just go for it, push through with willpower, go to a yoga class and soothe yourself, try the perfect morning routine. Those surface level strategies, I would say, don't usually work if the fear is big because you're bypassing the psychological root cause. So they can help you to soothe yourself or to feel better for a bit, but they're not really going to help you to actually break through the fears. So here's what I want to share 3 simple steps to break through your fears. The first is, talked about this before, awareness. And I call this the name it to tame it method. So it's all about labeling the fear to take its power away. So really ask yourself when you're having a strong reaction, when you're feeling very scared, when you're afraid of something, what is it that you're actually afraid of? And make it very, very specific. What, like, is it being, I don't know, having your partner leave you and being left alone? Is it starting your business and failing? Like, be really, really aware of what specifically you are afraid of. And you can always find out by asking yourself, what is the consequence that I want to avoid?
Yeah.
That always points you to what you're actually afraid of. And then once you've identified your fear, also become aware of how you emotionally and behaviorally react to that fear. So, how does that fear make you feel? Where can you feel it in your body, maybe even? Are certain areas tight? Do you tend to shrink up? How does it feel in your body? And how do you respond or react to fear? So, do you people please? Do you avoid? Do you procrastinate? Like, what is the self-sabotaging behavior that shows up in your life as a reaction to the fear that you're having? So, the first step to summarize is awareness. Be aware of what you're afraid of and become aware of how you are reacting to those fears on an emotional and behavioral level. The second step is all about treating the psychological root cause, and that is your mindset, your beliefs, basically. I always love to say, we don't create what we want. We create the reality. We create our reality based on what we believe on a conscious and subconscious level. And this is where it gets tricky because, as you've mentioned before, right, most of our beliefs are subconscious. 95% are subconscious. So
Wow.
how are we going to access that and know which fears and limiting beliefs are actually stopping us? That's very tricky. So if you really want to dive very deep, my recommendation is work with a psychologist or work with a mindset coach. But there's something easy that you can definitely apply in your everyday life, and that is switch from negative self-talk to positive self-talk. And I love to say this is the power of reframing. So whenever you catch yourself basically doubting yourself, like, I don't have enough time to do this, switch to, I can make enough time. I'm going to find a solution. When you think, I don't have enough money or resources to start this business, think of it the opposite way. I don't have enough resources yet, or I'm going to find a way to find resources. When you catch yourself thinking, what if I fail? Ask yourself instead, what if I succeed? So anytime, yeah, you catch yourself having these negative thoughts, simply switch to positive ones and then tune into those emotions that come up once you really start thinking about these positive things and switch to this, yes, I can do it, I'm going to crush it attitude. It really makes a huge, huge difference. And something very personal that I'd like to share quickly, Mieke, you're always there also to help me break through my doubts and my fears. And I remember, so currently I'm in my 30s, and we continue to send each other voice notes all the time. And I shared a few times like, oh, it's like so hard to date in your 30s. It's so hard to find someone who's like compatible and like remember who like meets all your standards. And I remember you pointed out to me in a message, and it was so beautiful and so powerful and so helpful. You said something along those lines of you keep on saying that it's so difficult, but then you're making it more difficult for yourself.
Hmm.
Why don't you tell yourself, my dream partner is out there and he's excited to meet you,
Hmm.
and tell him, like, just send this message to the universe. I know I'm ready, you're ready, let's make it happen soon. So cool. I actually wrote it down in my journal today, so thank you.
Hmm.
But these small shifts really can make a big difference. Like
I
really,
can't
they
wait to
switch
meet
up.
your future partner now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we will meet soon,
cool.
soon.
Yeah.
The message has been sent. If you're out there and seeing this, I'm waiting.
I'll also ping
But
him. I'm like, yeah.
but anyways, yeah, so really there is such a big power in
Mm.
reframing and really switching from a no I can't to yes I can attitude, and things will happen. Things are aligning for my highest good attitude. And the third step, quite simple, take action. Do something. Do not wait around. And I really want to emphasize that you do not have to eliminate self-doubt or fear to take action. It's totally normal and okay to
Yeah.
still doubt yourself and to have fear, but you can still take action. So I think a lot of times people think like, "Oh, I will have to like totally get rid of the fear and the self-doubt and then I can take action." No. Real courage is, despite having the fears and self-doubt arising, still taking action, because as you take action and you experience positive results, that will help you to eliminate your fear and your self-doubt. So do not wait and procrastinate. That's your sneaky mind telling you in a self-sabotaging way, like, you're not ready. No, you are, you can be ready even though you're still dealing with self-doubt and with fears. So to summarize, the 3 steps to break through fear. Step number 1, become aware of your fears and how they're affecting you on an emotional and behavioral level. Step number 2, shift your mindset. And an easy thing in your everyday life you can do is shift from negative self talk to positive self talk. And step number 3, don't let your fears and self doubt get in the way of taking action. Just get started.
Oh, I love that. I took so many notes while you were speaking, and it's really one thing that I want to say about this like taking action thing. It's all about
Mm,
repetition, right? And we also use this word a lot because, but it is so important because it's not going to happen overnight. You know, it's really it's something, and I heard this in a different podcast the other day, and it was about something completely different. But it was so it was about like this whole like AI and everything that's happening with technology and so on. And this guy, he said something. It was so beautiful because he said the problem or one of the challenges in AI is it's always all about the outcome and not the process. And that is the whole thing
mm,
also about like this whole like growth thing. It's not about I'm not fearful anymore. It's about the process of learning, what are my fears, who am I, what do I
mm.
like, and so on. It's this whole, and this process is beautiful, and that's why it's like kind of like this take action repetition. It's not about I'm not going to be fearful anymore. It's really about this like, yeah, going through this process and growing. And one more thing that I wanted to add for like what's another thing that a really wonderful like mentor said to me: growth doesn't have to like happen or begin with like these giant leaps. And in fact they
Mm.
usually don't. It is in the little steps, and that's why take action is so important. Of course, awareness and mindset shifts as well, but this take action, and and take action in the sense of you know open up that diary and write down a beautiful quote. Do that 3 sit-ups, even though you feel like this is pointless or whatever. Eat the apple, or I don't know. It's kind of like it is in these little steps. And that's why when we tie it to this whole thing of fear, it's when we aim too big too fast, our mind can feel overwhelmed or threatened. And and then it kind of struggles to wrap itself around the unknown, and then fear kicks in, and then it freezes, and then we're like, oh, let's distract ourselves, and so on. So, and it does not mean don't dream big. Of course, dream big, right? But don't forget the small. And every big dream is little steps. And I said to her the example, for example, for me, one of my dreams is one day I want to open a school, right? And I was like, oh, it's a big dream and so on. And she's like, yeah, and what are the little steps? Is opening that Word doc and writing down my dream school, and that's a little step. And I was like, yeah, you're right, so it's kind of like, it's, yeah, these little steps are just so yeah, are so important. And that's why, yeah, the real transformation, or not the real, but like one big aspect of transformation often begins in the tiny and the manageable steps. And yeah, again, it's not about playing small, but it's about building trust. That I really like, actually. It's really about building trust with your nervous system and with yourself, right? So it's like really giving your mind something that it can be like, yeah, this is cool, without like getting a panic attack because, you're quitting your job and you're becoming, I don't know, a yoga teacher in Bali or whatever, where your mind might be like, ah, wait a minute. So it's like, yeah, yeah, it's those steps. And yeah. Um, time. Time is a beautiful concept because it's like, it's whenever you're having fun, it goes by way too quickly. And it always, yeah, I think one of these days we're gonna do like an episode where we don't time, and we just like
Mm.
talk, and like we take all the time that we kind of want. I think that'd be really nice. So at the end
It
of
will be long, just to give you a heads up.
yeah,
We're
exactly. I
talkers.
will give you a heads up beforehand. Be like, okay, block out your calendar. Yeah, this is gonna be big. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so this was again really really beautiful. I had a lot of fun, and in the end, before every episode, we always want to give you like a little like wisdom or an exercise. And Maddie, you brought a really cool exercise today, and I'm also going to be doing it because I read through it before the episode. So,
Mm.
yes, please tell me, what have you got for us today?
Right. So today I've got this visualization exercise. We can do it as a short guided meditation, but what I love about this exercise is you can do it on your own, and you can do it within 3 or 5 minutes. It doesn't have to take long. You can do it in the morning or any time where you're just like, oh, I'm really afraid of this. Oh my God, can I do this? Just take the time, or you can make it part of your morning routine even. Um, just a little bit of background information why this works. Your brain responds to imagined events almost as if they're real, especially on an emotional and neurological level. So, this
Mhm.
means that you can actually train your brain to embody confidence and courage even before anything in your life even before external circumstances have changed. And this is why it's so powerful. So I want you to do this exercise when you have something you want to achieve and self-doubt and fear kicks in. And I want to invite you to do this with me right now, in fact. So, first of all, think of something that you really want to achieve in your life, but you know that self-doubt and fears are getting in your way. And this can be related to any life area: finding your perfect partner, getting that promotion, starting your business, moving away, anything. And once you have that, you have identified your goal and make it very, very clear and tangible. I want to invite you to now close your eyes so you can visualize the outcome that you want very, very vividly. So think about, where are you? Where will you be? Where are you once you will have achieved this goal? And think about, what are you doing? Who is with you? And really feel it in your body, the joy, the confidence, the ease of things working out. And once you've tuned into that ideal scenario, shift your attention to you within that ideal scenario and outcome. That bold, courageous, next level version of you. How do you show up? What energy do you carry? How do you feel? How do you speak, move, and act? And really tune into the sensation of how that feels in your body. That version of you has successfully achieved your goal. And now I want to invite you to feel the gratitude for this positive outcome that you so deeply wanted. How amazing and beautiful does it feel to be able to be so grateful to have achieved that? Again, shift your attention to your body. You might notice some tingling in your body, or the area around your heart might start to feel warmer. You might even feel like a light or some warm energy expanding throughout your body. Really tune into how amazing that feels. And slowly bring back your attention to the present moment, and gently, when you're ready, gently open your eyes. Mm. And I can really not emphasize enough, it is such an easy exercise. You can do it at any time. Your brain literally doesn't know the difference between what you imagine almost and like real life. So the more you train yourself to really align with this version of yourself who has already achieved what you want to, the easier it will be for you to work with your brain to shift your mindset and get into this, yes, I can do this attitude. And what I also love to do personally after these visualizations, like journal, if there is something that came up, because it's all about awareness. I highly encourage you, if there's something that came up, take a few minutes after we're done with this episode, write down whatever was meaningful to you, whatever you want to remember, whatever gives you power and strength to move from self-doubt to self-belief. And continue, as you continue growing and breaking through your fears after this episode, really focus on the version of yourself you need to become to break through those fears that you're having, because you cannot stay the same person and expect anything to change in your life. It means you have to level up to that version who can break through those fears. And it doesn't have to be a large mega project, just like Mieke shared before. Starting with small, tangible steps is a great way to start. So stop overthinking and start doing. And this is how you can really start moving from self-sabotage to self-empowerment.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it really shows the light on this, like you're making the unfamiliar familiar, right? By visualizing.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's why I thought also that's why it's such a powerful tool, and that's why your mind loves it. And yeah. All right. So for our next episode, we are going to go even deeper into the whole topic, of course, of thriving, because we're the thriving mindset. And we're going to be talking about trusting yourself and like really taking bold risks, and really taking bold risks with confidence. So it's about like how do you make big decisions, and what we want to talk about is like how do you build like this unshakable self-trust how do you step into your confidence, and take risks that really align with your vision. And it's not going to be so much about like this whole like fear aspect, but really on the other side, it's really about like us as people and our confident and our unshakable confidence. And I'm very confident that this will be a cool episode. Thank you so much for today, dear Maddie. And thank you also for listening.
Thank you to you too.
Yeah,
And everyone here listening, of course.
exactly.
Always a pleasure to have you here.
Totally. So I guess we'll see each other for next episode.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.